Analyzing the collapse of neoliberalism, as I think it's important to interpret and perceive the roots behind the system and how the system itself came to fruition. And a big part of capitalism before neoliberalism, the important fact that needs to be understood is Protestantism. And I think when we look at the Protestant case, I think it's viable to say, and it's fair to say that it weakened the foundations of how people understand and interpret moral obligations. But that image and that idea was substantial because it came as a reaction towards Catholic abuses. And when understanding Martin Luther's theory, that case correlates with the bourgeois case because it's with the bourgeois because it factors in the general mood of the populace, how the people are thinking, how the people are feeling. So that's why. Then that's ultimately it ignited a spark that that suggested that a change is happening. And it's not the age of the king anymore. It's the age of the people. But ultimately, that's like ideologically that is true. But once you actually interpret, you understand that the society, under Protestant ethics, became divided into consumers and sellers, suppliers and buyers. Which created a capitalist cycle that that grows ownership, that grows capital and grows influence. And ultimately that progressed into neoliberalism and globalization because there's always that belief that there's always room for more. And the core idea that's at question is the culture, how people understand the mentality, how people think, how people approach things, how people dictate what's right and wrong, and how people distinguish what's objective and what's subjective. So the Protestant case ultimately pointed out facts and realities upon how the feudal system was abusing its influence, its might, how feudal systems were abusing their might, by also understanding that religion, Catholic, Christianity was being weaponized as a weapon to amass an army, or amass absolute control, absolute subservience to the head. So that's the stress upon the general citizen, and the mood and the state of mind of the general citizen was what ultimately altered altered the feudal system entirely and led to the introduction towards capitalism, which of course happened during the French Revolution. But when looking at you know Martin Luther perceived that there was a general consensus that people felt as if they couldn't, rise up and speak against, because that's the grand narrative. So there was the emergence of a dialectic of interpretation. Was the driving religious ideal amongst the general populace when interpreting Christian values, attempting to replace and suppress the influence of the Catholic Church. So there's rebellious cause. This rebellious cause became the face of the New World, because subtle glimpses of liberal, liberal values and liberty were coming to fruition. And in the feudal state, the one who's loudly screaming freedom will ultimately rise to a certain amount of prominence, because in a feudal state, subservience is the norm. To serve is the norm.